A few years ago, I made a video about Scott Pilgrim and my thoughts on the series. I talked about how much I loved it and how I resonated with the characters and my love for its adaptations like the movie and the game. So reasonably, when the anime was announced at Netflix, I was beyond excited. News leaked about it, I think in early 2022 before they even started working on the show, so Netflix didn't say anything about it until officially announcing it along with the cast in early 2023. They also revealed that the animation studio Science Saru would be animating the series. They have a ton of amazing projects under their belt. But until then, that's all we knew about the series, and I knew just like everybody else, I was so excited to get a faithful animated adaptation of the... Oh. This isn't what I was expecting at all. I know some people were upset about this series being a totally different story, but personally, this hooked me in right away. It also made me realize one of my favorite aspects of the Scott Pilgrim brand. Each of its adaptations is different and unique in its own ways. The books still exist, you can go and read them at any time and the story will always remain the same. Playing the game or watching the movie and show just gives you a new interpretation, and to be honest, I much prefer this over recycling the same story over and over again. It keeps the series fresh, it gives new generations multiple pieces of media to engage with, and hopefully they take away something different from each one. What I enjoy most about this show is the stellar animation, great soundtrack, and score. But most importantly, it's recontextualizing of Scott Pilgrim. More specifically, it's recontextualizing of what the story would be like without Scott Pilgrim. The show starts with familiar territory. Girl in my dreams, gay roommate, dating a high schooler, yada yada yada. We know this already. Things take a turn when Scott seemingly loses the fight to Matthew Patel, even to his surprise. This was the perfect way to turn things around, getting us comfortable with the things we already know and then pulling the rug out from underneath us. From here, it's a bit unclear where things are going until Ramona realizes that
he's alive!
And this shifts into my personal favorite aspect of the series. One of the coolest things about Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is the focus on Ramona as she takes the role of protagonist in the series. Ramona has always been one of the more criticized characters from the books, and not so much for her character, but more so the lack thereof. A common complaint thrown around is that in a story about growth, change, and acceptance, Ramona doesn't develop nearly as much as she should, being the second main character of the series. This is absolutely corrected here, which is really satisfying to see. When she discovers that Scott's alive, she searches day and night for his kidnapper, and on this journey she makes amends with her exes, accepts her flaws, and becomes a better person because of it. Which is the most powerful thing a person can do, hence Super Ramona. She constantly runs away from the people she loves, and in this series we watch her not only reconcile with the people she's hurt but also become a better person in the process. She's used to being the one to end a relationship, to disappear without a trace, and now the tables are turned and she's forced to accept her fault, partly in how her exes turned out. Most of them at least. The show gets really meta with the plot about the movie. Young Neil is trying to write a screenplay with no luck and then believes that he wrote a full script in his sleep.
I'm a screenwriter!
The script follows what would have happened if Scott won the fight against Matthew Patel. Sound familiar? It's not until episode 6 that young Neil reveals that he doesn't even remember writing the script, and upon looking deeper into it, they realize the script was written 14 years in the future. At this point, Ramona has already figured out the case. The twins use their robot to create a vegan portal to kidnap Scott, and after Scott shows up to confirm Ramona's theory, he reveals to her that it was her who wrote the screenplay. This version of Ramona is trying to find Scott after only going on one date with him. This version of Ramona is trying to make sure that their love still has a chance, and I absolutely adore that. It reminds me a lot of I Love You in Every Universe from Multiverse of Madness. Ramona finally gets the focus and development she always deserved, and I'm honestly gonna find it a little hard to revisit the books and the movie after this portrayal of her. We finally get Ramona's perspective, and we get to see new sides of the other characters because of that. In the books, we get a volume with each ex, with some lasting much longer than others. Despite this, we don't get too much about who they are besides that they dated Ramona and now they're evil. The movie naturally gives us less time, but Scott Pilgrim Takes Off gives us extensive time with the exes, and by the end, you kinda grow to like most of them. Ramona naturally assumes that any of the exes could have taken Scott, so she starts tracking them down. The first ex Ramona makes amends with is Roxie, who's honestly the most deserving in my opinion. As much as I love the books, they are a little dated with their fetishizing of bisexual women, and that's kind of the main joke with Ramona and Roxie. In Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, we're shown the real conflict between the two and just how poorly Ramona treated Roxie when they were together. We're given this beautiful sequence where Ramona finally owns up to her mistakes, and it's really refreshing to see and hear. We get to know Lucas better, and we see how much Ramona leaving him for Todd really affected him. And like I mentioned before, this forces Ramona to take accountability for the pain that she caused. We get to finally know Matthew as a character, his wants, his aspirations. I guess the same can be said for Todd.
I'm in love with Wallace Wells!
This was really funny. We get to see Gideon for the loser he really is, but how the plotter Ramona mentioned is still there. Unfortunately, despite the twins playing a decent role in the main reversal, they still don't get to do too much overall, and it's a shame. But a ton of other characters get their fair share of development too.
No, I fear change!
In the books, everything revolves around Scott, obviously, but this series shows us how these characters would progress without him. They get to form new relationships with each other, learn more about themselves, and by the time Scott comes back, we get to see these people change for the better. Knives joins Sexbomb and becomes music partners with Steven, Kim quits her shitty job at the video store, and Wallace gets to find himself and get out of that little apartment.
Birds are real?
Oh, and young Neil is still the coolest dude around.
Must be, dude.
Even the evil exes get satisfying endings, or in this case, new beginnings. With Matthew becoming a star, Lucas Lee becoming a barista, Todd and Roxie forming a pretty cute friendship, the twins learning how to redeem themselves, and... well, Gideon's still evil, but hey, 6 out of 7 ain't bad. Most importantly, Scott and Ramona finally choose to put themselves first and allow themselves to truly love each other. In the book, Scott is haunted by his past, with it literally following him around in the form of negative Scott. The twist here is Scott is confronted with his future and has to literally fight himself to put it all behind him. He has to kill his old self to become a new and better person. An interesting way to look at this is that even older Scott and Ramona are the Scott and Ramona from the comics. After they jumped through that door, things didn't go as smoothly as we all thought. While Scott sees how the future went for this older version of himself, he also sees what Ramona has been doing ever since he left, which gives him the confidence to believe that Ramona and him are truly meant to be despite what older Scott told him. He's shown what he has to do to be better. He finally allows for change to occur and realizes how satisfying and more effective that is than trying to punch your problems away. And Ramona shows herself through her own actions throughout the whole show that what she's done in the past doesn't have to define her. She gets to choose who she wants to be. In an age where reboots are done over and over again to simply retell a story while missing a lot of what made the original great in the first place, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off goes against this mentality in the best way possible. Instead of giving us a story we already know, we're given an incredible what-if scenario that still perfectly captures the essence of the story and, dare I say, does it better than the original comic did. Scott Pilgrim is about growth and change and how running from our mistakes only makes us relive them over and over again. Finally allowing Ramona to be given the spotlight and development she should have always had, giving Knives the opportunity to grow in Scott's absence and actually get a real apology from him, and giving us, the audience, another chance to relive this series and be reminded that we also have the power to change and the ability to break these patterns. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is amazing and such a beautiful love letter to this series. Thanks for watching. What did you think of Scott Pilgrim Takes Off? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed watching, leave a like. Hey, maybe even consider subscribing. I appreciate it a ton. I'll see you all soon.